Welcome everyone to the 8th round of the Abu Dhabi Masters 2025. We have on the screen Mayank Chakraborty on the right, a very talented youngster from Assam. Very likely he could become the first GM from Northeast India. On the left is the talented Indian youngster P. Iniyan from Erode in Tamil Nadu. Right now Mayank has had a tremendous event. He has beaten Fauzi Adam and Jakub Seaman in the last two rounds, and a win here will get him his GM norm, which would get him closer to the GM title. Well, the game has begun and Iniyan opens the game with d4. We have d5 played here by Mayank. It's going to be interesting because Iniyan is a player who never really plays for draws or dull chess. He's always playing fighting chess. And let's see what Mayank chooses against the Queen's Gambit declined. Oh, he goes for c5, the Tarash. The Tarash opening is on the board, and e3 by Iniyan, trying to keep his options open. He plays the symmetrical line, and Mayank now brings his knight out to f6. Iniyan brings his knight to f3. And now the knight comes out to c6. We have 100% symmetry on the board here. And pawn comes up to a3 by Iniyan. He plays pawn to a6. The idea is to take on c4 and play b5. Pushes pawn to h3. A very quiet move, I must say, and Mayank is like, thank you so much, I'm going to transpose this into a favorable version of Queen's Gambit accepted. Bishop takes c4 played, and pawn to b5, gaining space on the queen side. Iniyan plays his bishop back to a2. And now black has to decide how is he going to develop his pieces. He goes bishop to e7. Maybe this bishop comes to b7 and he's able to castle here. I think the opening has been a success for Mayank. Well, essentially Mayank needs 1 point in 2 rounds at his current rating average to make a GM norm. So a win here would basically seal it for him. b4 played, attacking the knight on c3. And now Iniyan goes pawn to d5. Whoa! Iniyan trying to create a complete mess on the board. He could have moved his knight away, but d5 takes the pawn on c3. And now takes the pawn on c6. Queen b6 is the best move, and Mayank plays it. Very nice move. And his point is, if you take b takes c3, queen c6, he's happy with that position. But Iniyan goes in further. He goes queen a4. And his point is, if you take here, he wants to play bishop b2, queen b2, and maybe rook f b1 when the queen is in trouble. Ideas of c7. Very interesting. But Mayank, very pragmatic, goes queen b5 and he takes it. Maybe bishop b3 was better. Takes, and b takes c3. For the time being, Iniyan is a pawn up, but this pawn is not very strong on c6. Knight e4, attacking the pawn on c3. Can you go pawn to c4? Here is the question. He plays it. But this is a very dangerous move because bishop can pop out to f6. He does it. Bishop f6, attacking the rook on a1. And now rook b1. He plays the rook to b1. And do we go knight c3? No, if knight c3, c takes b5 is a very good position for white. So b4, an excellent move played by Mayank. Attacking the bishop here. Oh, he takes it and he gives up the piece on a2. Iniyan is really risking it all here. What a game this is turning out to be. Rook takes a2 taken. Can Mayank win this game? He's better. This would be epic. b5, pushed forward, and now b6, b7 is his threat, but king e7, a good move, and I believe Mayank has things under control here. Look at the number of players who came to watch the game. b6 now played. He's going b7, but the piece will be given back for one of the pawns. The question then remains, is white going to be better there, or is black going to be better? King d6, I love this move. Now you need to play b6, because otherwise you're just lost. c7 means bishop b7, or else you're losing a pawn here. So b7 played. He gives up the piece, and if rook takes, you have king takes c6. So pawn takes, again threatening to queen here. So he comes back king c7. And although right now white is a pawn up, black's position is better because of the domination of his pieces. Look at this. The bishop has nowhere to go. It's completely blocked, and look at Mayank feeling the great confidence in himself. Rook b3 played. And now just rook b8 and capture this pawn on b7. Mayank also has 1 hour 5 minutes on the clock, so time wise also doing brilliantly. Rook b8 finds the best move. He's playing great chess here. Knight comes to e1. Well, Iniyan is clearly struggling here. His position bad. Rook takes b7 taken. He takes, rook takes b7, king takes b7 played, and now knight d3 could come in potentially. He does play knight to d3, attacking the pawn on c5, but simple king c6 should be good enough. He goes king c6, and now material is even, and black pieces are completely dominating. How does Iniyan continue here is the big question. Also, threat is knight d6 to win the pawn on c4. He goes pawn to f3, but knight d6 looks like a winning move here. And he finds it. Knight goes back to d6. And rook to f2 played. Now the easiest way to win this position is to take and play knight c4, and you're going to convert this endgame. But he goes rook a4. Mayank is trying to keep the rook on the board. He feels that his rook is more active. Bishop b2. Iniyan tries to trade the bishops. Rook takes on c4. So pawn up now. And he takes the bishop on f6. Bishop takes on f6. gf6 taken. And Iniyan now tries to create counterplay with rook a2. He wants to enter on a7. Maybe give a check here on a6. Rook c3. Another powerful move played here by Mayank. Knight comes back to f2. Can we simply snatch the pawn on e3? Seems like a nice free pawn. Okay, there's knight g4, which you have to contend with. But okay, give up this pawn and start pushing the c pawn. He goes king b5. He's trying to stop the king from getting in. Rook b2 check. Maybe the smartest thing could be to go back to c6. Goes king a4, of course. Mayank is like, if I say A, I must say B. He goes ahead. e4 played, saving the pawn. 35 minutes to Mayank, 18 minutes to Iniyan. Rook c1 check. And now he's getting ready to push the pawn down the board. King h2, c4. Finds it, pushes. Black still clearly winning. Rook comes to d2, attacking the knight. You can go knight b5, plays his knight to b5. And now c3, c2, knight a3 or king b3, and move the rook and queen is the idea. Well, Iniyan goes knight to d1. What's the point here? If c3, maybe he just wants to sack his knight for the piece. That might be his idea. He goes c3. And the pawn is so strong, he takes it. And now Mayank is a pawn up. Rook takes c3 is the correct move, because if rook d7, he can go back rook c7 potentially here. King comes up to g3 now. Okay, first things first, rook c7, just consolidate maybe. He goes rook c5, trying to cut off the white king. King h4 played here by Iniyan. Rook to g5 played here. He's attacking the g2 pawn. g4 played by Iniyan. Iniyan knows that his position is lost almost. e5. Interesting move here. Rook d7 comes in. I think the best move now is knight d4. Attacking here. You go for the counter attack. But instead Mayank goes wrong. He goes rook g7. And this allows king h5, king h6. And all of a sudden the position has become equal. You can see Mayank being visibly tensed. It's also the thought of GM norm that somewhere lurks in your mind. Not sure if Mayank knew that he would be making his GM norm, but if he knew it, it's surely a bit stressful for him. And of course Iniyan can feel this, that his position is getting better, because now after king h6, he's actually attacking the rook, the pawn, the other pawn. Knight goes back, trying to defend everything here. And a very important move, check. Because if you otherwise play something like h4 here, rook g6, and you lose the rook here. So that's the reason why check, king moves, and now h4. King comes to c5. So isn't white completely lost here? It turns out that after rook e7, the threat is rook takes e6 and king g7. So he gives a check. Iniyan happily snatches a pawn. King takes h7. Knight f8 check. This is how you basically go wrong in winning positions. In fact, white is now so much better. f7 is hanging, and oh my god, not better, it's equal, but the position has changed completely. Rook takes h4 taken here by Mayank. And now it's a draw, but even a draw is difficult here. Rook h3 need to be accurate. Finds it. If you basically botch up winning positions, you can see here one of the best talents of Indian chess also doing it. Chess is tough. Chess is hard actually for everyone. And now g5, very important maybe to take here. fg5, give up your rook, play king d4, and then draw with these two pawns. Instead goes king d4, that's also playable. Rook takes f6. Maybe the safest bet is rook g3. Play, maybe give up your rook for the g pawn, take the e pawn and try to draw there. So king e4 taken, and he goes g7, maybe king d4, he goes king d3 here. Oh, brings the king back. Thinking, goes king d4, king d3. And now a check and a very necessary, maybe king e3 or king c4. But he blunders with king c3. He's not leaving it yet. Oof, big mistake. Big mistake here because of rook e6. And now suddenly the position is completely lost, because look at this very nice thing what he has done. He goes here, comes back, forces the king back, and now king f7. And the problem of this entire thing is, we'll try to understand this endgame deeper in a bit, but king f7, and now Iniyan is winning. Look at Mayank there. Insane, and Iniyan has managed to win, and that is the look of a guy who was totally winning and is now losing. e4, but now rook g6 is coming in. Oof. The rook is going to just simply block the pawn, and it will be a queen. He finds it. Rook g6. Mayank resigns. What a heartbreaking loss this is. Chess is tough there, and of course you can see Mayank is unhappy, but it's games like this that make you a champion in the years to come. But Iniyan, what a fighter, not giving up till the very end and scoring this very important win. Let's try to understand what exactly happened. Where did Mayank go wrong in that rook endgame? From a draw, it turned into a loss. It was very, very instructive actually, gaining that one move tempo, but it wasn't winning. It was very specific. And so let's try to get to the bottom of this position. So after g5 in this position, king d4, he took rook g3, everything was fine, g7, and now king d3, check, and suddenly king c3 turned into a losing move. King c4 was a draw, king e3 was a draw. What changed? Let's have a look. So if you go king e3, and I try to do the same thing with rook e6 gaining time, this doesn't work because e4, king f7, and rook g7, king g7, and king f3, and I am able to stop the king from coming downwards, and my pawn is queening here. In the game, what happened was king c3, rook e6, now the king has to come back, king f7, and now if I take e4, the king is just perfectly positioned for white to stop the pawn, and the pawn is stopped. So in that sense here, king c4, if he had played here to check, and then rook e6, then I can go back king d5. That's the key move here. You can go back king d5 and force this, let's say for example, force him to move, because if king f7, there is rook g7. So let's say you go rook a6, and now e4, and you are in time, king f7, just sack for the pawn, and then just e3, and you are able to queen. So very unfortunate that this move king c3 loses, but it's also very important to see that, you know, in such positions like when he went king d3, if you put your rook behind the pawn, black could push, and that is why this is known as an intermediate check, which you force and then come here. Now he cannot push, so has to go back, and then king f7 and wins the game. So that intermediate check was a very good try by Iniyan, which worked in the game, this rook d6 check, and I hope that you were able to learn something from this endgame.
Iniyan, we are on the final day at the 31st Abu Dhabi Masters. You have had a very hectic the last few days. You have been playing tournaments continuously. And in this interview, we want to talk about yesterday's game, probably one of the most exciting games of the entire tournament. So if you want to take us through what happened yesterday.
It's not an exciting game, but one of the biggest swindles I have ever done. At first, the game, it started as a Tarash. I did not want to go into the main line because there are too many equalish variations. And he needed a draw to get a Grandmaster norm, so I was thinking he will go for one of those. I just tried to get a game, but in one position when I went for d5, bc3 take, I missed queen b6, and then just everything is simplifying. And at this point I realized that objectively the position is equal and I should simplify, but I just wanted to keep the game going on. He offered a draw at this point also, but I thought let's keep trying. And when I went for this idea with c4, it almost works. The point is that somehow I'm getting a pass pawn on the c6 and combine it with another pawn on the b file. If he doesn't allow it, I'm getting one pawn up. It's a half a pawn, but I can push that endgame. And it actually works except for this line that he found, king e7, king d6. He played very good in that stage of the game. And when he played this, I realized that I'm getting worse because for the moment I'm one pawn up, but all of my pieces are stuck and I cannot move any of it. And here I offered a draw, but he refused, which is the correct decision. And after some point, I'm losing the pawn on c4. There were multiple ways for him to convert the endgame. Probably the simplest one is trade the rooks on f2 and then take the pawn on c4, and then it's just a done deal. But he kept the game going on with rook a4, and I mean everything wins. If you look at the computer, it will all say +3 all the time. But this is something that I wanted him to do because the game keeps going on with the rooks on the board, and I managed to weaken his pawn structure on the king side. I kind of did not have any hope until the moment where I realized that I can go this knight d1 idea in the game, and for some reason his king is just a bit too far away on e4.
Yes.
And he is getting a piece in multiple ways. He could either go for rook d1 and c3, which will go for a knight versus pawns endgame, which is still winning for black. But now it becomes very concrete. It's a move for move, and black is winning in a couple of ways, but it's very concrete. And of course, in black's mindset, you don't want to think and calculate in this position. The other way is what he did in the game with c3, and he has rook knight versus rook endgame, which should again be clearly winning. But his pawn on h7 and the king side is just a bit weak, and he has to play a bit with precision. And I'm pretty sure there are many ways to win, and probably he saw few of them. And he thought the way that he did in the game is the cleanest way, because he puts his rook on g7 and the knight comes to the dark square, and it's a blockade. But he missed that I have a very, very important check on a7, and once I saw this trick, I was aiming for it. I was going for this thing, and once I got rook a7 and h4, now suddenly black is the one who has to find ways to equalize, which is very crazy because I was just a piece down for nothing. There is no pawn or anything. And after I got h4 and I realized that okay, I can be pushing here, I saw the way for black to equalize. What he did in the game was right, with rook g6 and giving up the knight and taking the pawn. And once he got the pawn on f3, g5 was the only try, and now I think practically taking on g5 would be the best, and after take on f3, king d4, king e4. Now you have 2 pawns instead of 1, and the rook can never win against this. But okay, at this point it looks like everything is a draw, and he doesn't think that black can lose this position. And this is a classic trick. It's in some Dwaratsky's endgame books also. First you go check on d6, push the king away a bit, and then rook e6, it draws the king back a bit. And in that point, any square other than king c3 would have held. Like king c4 is fine, I believe, and king e3 also is a very safe square. But just king c3 was the mistake, and now I got a very critical tempo, because he thought that I'm gonna go g8 queen, rook g8, king g8, and my king is on g8, which is one tempo too late. But when I got king f7, and now you're forced to take on g7, king g7, my king is in time to stop the pawn, and it's a winning rook for the pawn endgame. I mean, I was very lucky yesterday. I just tried to put a bit of problems here and there, and just keep the game going. But nothing much to say. I was just very lucky.
We were, first of all, compliments to you for holding your fort and winning the game at the end. And we were, when we were going outside, we were seeing this, so many people were saying that this can be a resignable position, and yeah, Mayank is going to win and all. You have been on the other side also, that you will need one norm and you will become a grandmaster. And you could see his nerves play, right?
Yes.
And
that was one of the factors. I have been in this position far too many times when I was going for the GM title back in 2018 to 19, this period, that the final rounds is very critical. You have a lot of nerves, and many times winning position you don't win, drawn position you lose, things like this. So that was one of the factors that kept me going on. I know that he needs a draw to make a GM norm, and he's trying to win, and there is going to be some tension for him. But yeah, I mean, I just saw some tricks there. It was not yet resignable for me. The computer might say it's completely lost, but one or two traps, and I mean, just see what he does.
Yes, absolutely. And as you are a seasoned grandmaster, and there are so many players who are trying to get their norms and all, what advice would you give them?
It's easy to say, but very hard to implement. But don't look at the results. Don't look at especially in the last round. I have seen many people who become GM, and then the GM norms just keep flowing. Once I get the third norms, the norms keep coming. For example, let's say Hari Krishna. He was struggling to get norms for a long time. The moment he became a GM in La Plane, he got another norm or two after that. It's just back to back. So if you just play a normal chess, if you're in the level of a GM already, or getting 2500 and all these norms, it should be very easy for you to get norms, right, if you just don't think about it.
Right. Thank you, Iniyan, for such a wonderful display of prowess. Well played, and all the very best for the rest of the year.